episode number 31. Hi, you're listening to the Careers Beyond Motherhood podcast with your host, Janine Esbrand. I'm here to help working mums like you to thrive in your careers and in motherhood. I share tips, strategies, and inspirational conversations with awesome women to help reduce the struggle in your juggle.
Time for say, Mummy.
Hello, and welcome to today's show. Before we dive in, there's a few things I want to share with you. So last month I did a 30-day Q&A series on my Facebook page. So I did a Facebook live video every day, and I was answering questions about job searching, about returning to work, about changing career direction, about launching your own business, and about work-life balance. Now, my plan was to strip out the audio from each of those videos and share them with you on the podcast. Now, I've shared 2 already, but I'm not 100% happy with the audio quality from the videos. So I'm not going to continue to share them on the podcast, and instead I will be recording the same material in the future and be sharing it with you on the podcast. But in the meantime, if you want to access the videos, then I would encourage you to sign up for the 30-day video bundle that I've pulled together. So it's all the videos all in one place. You can just sign up and then you'll get access. So if you head over to the show notes, which is lightboxcoaching.com/episode 31, then you can click the link and sign up for the series. Okay, the other thing I want to tell you about is the Balanced Working Mum Challenge, which is kicking off tomorrow, the 9th of July 2018. The Balanced Working Mum Challenge aims to help you to create more balance in your working mum life. So we're going to be sharing 5 simple but really effective strategies that you can implement in your everyday life to help you achieve more balance. You're not going to have to spend a lot of time, but it's going to be really impactful. So I want to invite you to come and sign up and join us, because we're going through the challenge this coming week in the Careers Beyond Motherhood community, in the Facebook group. Every day we're going to be in there and we're going to be going through the challenge and sharing with one another. So if you want to come and join us, then please do head over to lightboxcoaching.com/Balanced Working Mum Challenge, and there's a hyphen in between each of those words. If you sign up, then I will see you on the challenge. Okay, on to today. So I'm really excited to share this interview with you. I interviewed this guest a while ago. So while I was still pregnant with my daughter, I interviewed her for the podcast. And then, as you know, I had to pause the podcast because managing everything when it came to life with 2 little ones and all of the other projects that I was working on just got a bit much. So I never had the chance to share this episode before, and so I'm happy that I'm getting to share it now, because there are so many golden nuggets in this episode. So I am interviewing Suzanne Brown, who is the author of an amazing book called Mompowerment: Insights from Successful Professional Part-Time Working Mums Who Balance Career and Family. So you guys know I'm all about empowering you and sharing with you tips and strategies on how you can do the juggle and do the juggle well. So Suzanne shares with us some amazing insights. So she interviews 100 women for her book about their experience of working part-time, and she pulled that all together to share an amazing resource. So on this episode, we dive into some of the things that she found out and uncovered through interviewing all of those women. Because here's the thing, after having children, a lot of us want to go back to work and work part-time, but we came from working full-time, so the transition to part-time work is quite different. So it's different when you are working part-time, and there's different challenges that come up for you as a part-time working mum. And so we talk about those things. We talk about important considerations you should make, some top tips for you when you're making the transition from being at work to then being back at home with your family, and generally the ups and downs of part-time work. So I think that this is going to be amazing for you to listen to, and you're going to get some great insight. Okay, so let's jump right in. Hi Suzanne, welcome to the show. I'm super duper happy for you to be here today. So please, can you introduce yourself to the audience and tell us a bit about you?
Thank you so much, Janine. So I am a strategic marketing and business consultant. And most people are like, what does that mean? I work on very high level marketing strategies. So I help seasoned entrepreneurs with things like writing business plans or trying to figure out like the market potential for a new product or service. And then I help larger companies work with their marketing agencies.
Okay.
And then, like you, I have a portfolio approach to my career. And so I started working on a book about 4 years ago. And I interviewed more than 110 professional part-time working moms. And I'm writing a book to empower moms to think differently and kind of like a how-to of how do you actually transition to that approach to your career. Oh, and I'm a mom to 2 boys, and I have a great husband most days.
You have a great husband most days.
Yes.
Other days he's not great, or he's not around.
The other days he's he tries really hard to be supportive whenever he can. But you know, some days they miss the mark.
I love that.
Most days I'm married to a really supportive husband, and then some days I'm like, man, you kind of suck, but that's okay.
Okay, maybe a topic for a different episode.
Very true.
There's so much in what you said in your intro that I want to kind of dig into. Firstly, in terms of your career, like what you do on the marketing side, it'd be interesting to understand how you went from there to then the other side of your portfolio career.
So I had worked at a marketing agency for the vast majority of my career. So I worked for 5 years at a marketing agency, and then I said, this is not working for me. Let me go get an MBA, which totally doesn't make sense. But I got an MBA because I wanted my life back, is really what it came down to. Marketing agency life, unlike Mad Men, is very glamorous and cool and whatever. But the reality is in life, it's pretty grueling and it's really tough and it's very demanding. And so I said, something has to give.
Sounds like how it is being a lawyer. Like it looks all nice. And then when you get into it, you're like, this is very hard and very intense.
Yeah, but people expect that of the law profession. It's like, oh yeah, there's like long days. You don't go into the ad world and think, I'm going to work 60 hours a week. Like that's not at all what your expectation is, but it can be really hard. And I didn't necessarily have really good role models. I went back and I got my MBA, man. And then I went and worked for a company that was supposedly very work-life balance oriented. It was an engineering firm, and that is a complete and total lie. So if you're a man, it was a great place to work. And so I ended up going back to the agency side, and I worked in a number of different roles. And about 5.5 years into that, we had our first child. And so I ended up scaling back to part-time. And about a year after that, I started working for myself. And I had done consulting on the side for about 7 years. So, you know, some people call it like the side hustle. I had done that for years. And really what it came down to was I was not being paid enough. And so I said, here's the deal. You're not paying me enough. I'm going to go do consulting work. I need you to just bless this and let's just move on. And so they're like, okay, that's fair enough. And when I started working for myself probably about a year after I started working for myself, I kept getting all these questions on like, how do you do it? How does it work? How do you make money? How can you manage all the things? Like I was getting all these questions, and so I started looking, and I was having coffee with a friend. And so we said, there's gotta be a resource that we can, because she was getting the same question. She also worked part-time. And so we said, okay, there's gotta be a place where we can send people. Well, it turns out there's not. And so I said, well, I'm going to create a resource, in my free time.
Yes.
And so I started working on it, not really knowing what I was getting into, and not really knowing what I was asking moms to share. And so I just kept going and going. And the magical number that I had in my head was 100.
Yes.
not really understanding how hard that was going to be.
That is a
Like,
lot of people to interview.
it is. It is. It's a lot. And it's, I ended up actually talking to more than 110. But I didn't really know, it didn't occur to me what I was asking people to share with me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, these women opened up their lives. I mean, they shared about like being on the verge of divorce and developmental delays with their children and their, you know, a parent dying. Like, there were amazing, wonderful things, but there were also these really intense stories that I'm like, wow, that's not at all my experience. But, you know, moms start working part-time for all kinds of different reasons. And so it's just kind of been a journey that started with a question, like, okay, where can I send them?
Yeah. That's amazing that's how the journey kind of unfolded, and that you followed the path, because you could have just said, you know, I don't really have I don't have the answers, but you're creating such an amazing resource that's going to be so rich with stories and inspiration. Because I think for a lot of people, when they transition from working full time to then having a family and then wanting to work part time, it's knowing that it's possible, or having the feeling that it's possible, that can allow people the permission to say, actually, I am going to work part time, and it's okay because I do want to spend more time with my family. But I guess for a lot of people that are in certain professions, legal professions and other professions, where they don't see role models doing it, they feel like, well, how would it work? So being able to go to your resource is going to be amazing. It's going to be so useful for people. So it's great that you've just followed through, even though I can imagine 100 interviews is pretty intense, like you said.
I mean, even before I started actually working on the book, like the content of the book, I had already spent more than 10,000 hours working on it.
I love that you actually thought to start clocking the time from the beginning as well. You like keeping track. It's great.
So the saying is that you become an expert when you have spent 10,000 hours on a topic.
Absolutely.
And I kind of backtracked and figured out like, okay, how many hours have I spent talking to people? When you think about like the research that you do before you have those conversations and developing the template and like everything else, I mean, literally 10,000 hours of my time.
What does your kind of typical day look like now? So now that you work for yourself and then you have this project, how do you plan out your day? How do you manage your time? Because it's different when you go to an office, even if it's part-time and 3 days a week, and you kind of got more structure. So what does it look like now?
So start out the day, I wake up, I would say before everybody else, but that's not necessarily true because our boys often wake up before we do. I'm the first adult generally out of bed. And before I even get out of bed, I do like a check-in. So like, how am I feeling? Am I anxious? Am I grumpy? Am I super excited about something? Because even if you're super excited, that can be totally overwhelming for your kids, you know? And so like, I just make a mental note of like, are there any adjustments I need to make before I even get out of bed?
I like that.
Yeah. And it's like a moment of self-care to start my day. Like before I even look at my phone or anything, right? Get out of bed, work on the boys' lunches, take one or both our boys to school, because my husband takes our younger son to school 2 days a week. And then, and if I'm taking both boys to lunch, I generally get a workout in. Like I'll have like our toddler in the stroller between dropping off our first child and our second one. We'll just have at it. And even though their school is super close, their school is across the street. Their schools are across the street from each other, but there's still traffic. And so I just don't want to have to deal with that. So do that. And then I try to do a power hour in the morning, work-wise.
Okay.
So I am at my best in the morning. Like I am really at my best in the morning. Like I don't even really need caffeine to get up and go. And so it is really important for me to be able to use the most productive time of my day to do the most important things. So for, for the past few months, that's really been all about book stuff. Like that's when I write. That's when I do, really, that's when I write. Like more than anything else, that's when I write right now. Because my manuscript is due literally at the end of this week.
Oh, wow. So excited.
Yeah. So, for the editor, I should say. But if I wasn't working on a manuscript, I would probably be doing some kind of strategy, something for a client. Mm-hmm. So like Power Hour, like what's the hardest part of all the things that I need to do, what's the hardest thing? And I kind of go after that first.
Yes.
When I'm like at my best, right? Instead of trying to check off a bunch of things on my to-do list and leaving that to the end when you're like, I've got nothing else to give. Like I start with that.
Yeah.
Because it's going to get my best work.
Yeah.
Right.
And it makes so much sense to have that awareness of when you work best, how you work best, what needs to get done with the most amount of energy, because I think sometimes we just approach, like you said, the checklist of things that we need to get done, and you never really get to that big thing because you're trying to check off the small things so you can focus on the big thing, but by the time you do, you're probably not going to give it as much as you could have if you had tackled it first. So yeah, it's really good to get that level of, well, when do I actually work best? I know that for me, I work well in the evening. But my husband would not, that just doesn't work for him. He needs to sleep like really early. So he would just sleep from 8 o'clock every night if he could.
What?
I know. It's not even a recent thing. That when we first started dating, we were at university. So I was 20, he was 20, I was 19. And I used to go hang out at his house, and at 8 o'clock he wanted to lie down and just close his eyes. So that's just him. I know.
And that was it? He was done until the morning?
Yeah, he would just go sleep, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna leave now.
Wow. That's amazing. I have never gotten that much sleep, like single, on vacation, like whatever.
I know. And
wow, okay.
If I get that much sleep, it's too much. I can't. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and just...
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, I digress. Sorry. Talking about productivity, but it's about awareness and knowing when you work best.
Well, and I use specific methods as well. So I'm a big fan of the Pomodoro method.
Yes, I've heard about it.
Yes, so you work in 25-minute increments, and then you take like a 5-minute break. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of line up what it is that I want to be able to accomplish, and I naturally now work in 25-minute increments. Yeah. Like it's the way, like I've done it for long enough to where it's like, oh look, I started at 8, it's 8:25. Like it's just the natural way that my brain is like, I need a break. And that break can be anything. I mean, it can be like finding something to post on Twitter, or it can be like half unloading a dishwasher. Mm-hmm. So I kind of have the things that I need to tackle. And when I do my list for the day, even though I tackle the hardest things first, I tend to batch things. So if I try to get in the power hour, but if that's going to be 2 hours, then that's fine. Mm-hmm. But when I do my to-do list, it's everything that I have to accomplish. So it's not like, oh, here's the stuff for the book, and oh, on a totally different place, it's the stuff for my clients, and in a different place, it's the stuff for my family. Like they're literally all a list. They're just kind of sectioned out. Okay. And then I break them down. So there are going to be some things that are, make the doctor's appointment for a 4-year well check, like whatever for our son. And so that can be an easy thing that I can do in that 5 minutes.
Right.
So that way it's literally like fully productive time instead of, okay, well, I've got 5 minutes, so what am I going to do?
Spend 5 minutes trying to figure out what to do in the 5 minutes.
Exactly. For the next 5 minutes. Like, I don't have time for that. And so it's very much like, when I am working, I am working. Like, that is it. There is no relaxation time. Because I just don't have time. Yeah. But I get playtime with my boys in the afternoon. I mean, once I go to pick them up, like my day kind of shuts down until the evening.
Yeah. I think when you know that you've got restraints around your time and you're just super intentional, you get so much done. So when you do work part-time and you know you have to leave the office at 5 o'clock, you don't have the time for the chit chat that you used to have, and just waste. You're just there to just get things done.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, yeah, how much you could accomplish when you're actually conscious that you don't want to waste time.
I will say though, I am very intentional with the chit chat. Like there is always an end in mind, and I'm a really strong believer in network where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of going and finding a networking event, it's like talk to your colleagues at the office and be very specific. Okay, this week I'm going to set up one coffee date with someone who I haven't dealt with before. When I walk in with moms to pick up our kids at school, I've figured out that the natural transition to go from kid talk to grown-up talk,
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, so I get past that like
Quicker.
natural chit chat that you have. So,
yeah.
So, I mean, it's kind of like what you're saying, like you're very intentional with your time.
Yeah.
So, but that way I can fit in the fun stuff when I want to, like
Yes.
a lunch date with my husband or with one of my girlfriends at a new restaurant or whatever. Like I have built it in,
Yeah, totally. I love it. It's great, and I think it applies well when you're working for yourself, if you're at home and just having to be disciplined, but also when you're working in an office and you're trying to be productive and get the most out of the time that you have to spend there. It would be good to hear about, from your perspective and the people that you've interviewed and all that you've kind of come across in your research, what are some of the key, I guess, challenges that people face in terms of this part-time juggle, this working part-time and then having your family and having it all fit together?
So in my situation, my biggest challenge is really kind of keeping it all together in one place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's managing all the things in one go.
Yeah.
And it's largely, the clock works against you. Like I have a lot I have to accomplish. And honestly, when someone gets sick, it really sucks. Like that can push things back dramatically if they're out of school for 2 days.
Yeah.
Because I am bad and I have not built in the downtime. Like the downtime for me is the weekend. Like and the downtime is the afternoon. It's not built into like days.
Right.
So I think one of the biggest struggles that moms mentioned, or one of the biggest challenges they have is, you're always on. Yes. When you're a working mom. And so you don't necessarily have, you don't naturally have breathing space. And when you work part-time and you're trying to make the most out of every minute, and like you go from picking up, you go from working and you might even take a call in your car and then you pick up your child, like there's literally no buffer.
Yeah.
Like my husband has we'll call it a commute of like 15 or 20 minutes, but he has a transition from the time he leaves his office to the time he comes home.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So he can shift into daddy mode and husband mode. Whereas these moms who are trying to be as efficient and effective for as long as they can during the day, they don't have that.
Yes.
So it's like they have to, it's like a switch, right?
Like a literal switch.
Yeah. And I mean, literally they have to make it happen. And so they have to figure out like, what do they need to do in order to make that happen? And that is something that a lot of the moms, that was a challenge that came up over and over again of like, they had to build in breathing space.
Yes.
And the other thing is, I don't know, there's like this magical idea in our heads of like, if I had more time with my kids, it would be like this, mm-hmm. right? Like, and you have like playing outside and having a picnic and I don't know what, like all of the fun things, right? But there is an intensity to your kids that you see when you spend more time with them.
Yes.
Right? And so when you're a working mom and you have that intensity for work, like the whole time you're at work, right? Because like you said, there's not a lot of chit chat time. There's not a lot of downtime. And then you have to go to being a mom, right? And then there's the intensity of your kids that you might not have seen because they were at daycare and they had that adjustment period of like going from school to like, oh, seeing mom and dad at home.
Yeah.
Like there was this like, again, for them, it's like a buffer, right? And you see that in its raw form when you spend more time with your kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And not all moms were mentally prepared for that.
Right.
Why would you be? Right? Like that's not necessarily the thing that you don't see it, so you don't necessarily know it's there. And it's the same thing you're going through, but like, why would you think of that for your 6-year-old or your 8-year-old or whatever?
Yeah, yeah. So it's very much realizing that a lot of these things will come up as you go through different stages. So how you relate to your 1-year-old is going to be very different to your 4-year-old because they're going through different things and they're experiencing different things. And you are as well as you develop as a mother and in the whole journey of balancing everything. So I think it's important for people to be kind to themselves and not just always think I need to do, and realize that sometimes you need to take a step back and assess, is this actually working for me now? And I like what you said about people building in breathing space and realizing that that's what they needed to be able to function properly, or function in a way that isn't sending them completely crazy and into overwhelming meltdown.
Well, and in the design world, the white space that you create around something is equally as important as what you put in that white space. Yeah. Right? Absolutely. Because if not, you don't even know where your brain can track, right? Like it's just like a bunch of stuff on the wall and it's overstimulation. And so I think when you think about it in different terms, because there are definitely some moms who are like, I don't need breathing space. I'm fine. Like I could totally do this. And it's like, just think about it though. Like you can be so much more intentional and
calm.
Calm, more present, like all of that kind of stuff. If you have that transition, that breathing space, that the ability to move from one thing to the next instead of having that light switch, right?
Yeah.
Like it makes the things go together better.
Yeah. And I think what just came to mind for me is I remember when my son was smaller, and there would be times where it would just get so intense, and if my husband was around, I'd just say, I need to tap out. Like I just need a minute. I just need to go to the bathroom by myself. I'm closing the door. I don't want anyone else in the bathroom. No sharing today. And
no fingers under the door. Just no moment to myself.
Just to myself. But knowing that I was getting to that point, that I needed that was really important. Like feeling it in my body and just realizing that I'm getting frustrated now and I'm going to lash out, so I just need to step away. It worked for me to say, I just need my time. It doesn't have to be long, just a little bit of time. And so I think it's okay though to say that you need that if you need that, and to figure out how to fit it in.
I will tell you, before I started doing these interviews and really kind of thinking through it, every long while I would call my husband and I would basically say something to the effect of, if you want me to be here when you get home, you need to come home now.
So I'm going to run away.
If you want to ensure that I do not leave this house like in the next 30 minutes, you need to be here in the next 30 minutes. Because there is, and it was especially the case. We have two very active, energetic boys. Like there is, they literally go until they stop. So it's literally like we have two speeds, awake and asleep. Like that's literally it.
Yeah.
And so it is really hard. Like it is easier now that they are 6 and 3.5, but especially when, and our younger one didn't take marathon naps. I mean, he was a cat napper.
Oh, my son was a cat napper.
It was hard, and at night he would sleep fine, but during the day it's like when you're like, I just need an hour to myself, right? And that was just not going to happen. And so it just kept building and building and building. And then when I had a few moms talk about like this concept of breathing space, because they had been doing this part-time thing longer than I had, I'm like, that's what I don't have. Yeah. I don't have the built-in buffer, And so for me, the buffer is when I go to pick up our boys. And so I have that I take that as my moment, right? Like I try not to have that as like one more call, or whatever. Like it's and it's only like 10 minutes, but it's 10 minutes where I can turn on like public radio and listen to an interesting interview, or blare music in the car that I would never have that loud because it would burst their eardrums. Like, like rock out to the car and hope nobody's watching you dance. Like, to the music in the car. Like, it's just, you use it as your moment.
Yes.
But it took me a really long time to get there. Like, I was like, I don't know what I'm missing. Anyway.
No, it's awesome. I think it's really valuable for people to think in that way and to think about what you need and how you can make small adjustments. Sometimes it doesn't have to be a major shift that can make a huge difference to your mood and the way that you're just feeling like you're managing everything.
I mean, it's so true. And I think it's the small things that can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
It really is.
Absolutely.
They don't have to be like huge mind shifts. Like it can be small things. You wouldn't think 10 minutes can make a huge difference in your life, but it does.
Yeah, absolutely. I love inspirational quotes. Wanted to see if you have any that you like.
So I have two. One, I have a professor told me years ago, and it has always stuck. And that is everything is a baby step to something else.
Love that.
Because especially as an MBA, a lot of times we feel like you have to make these huge steps closer to your goals. And it's like, if you can just continue to make little steps, you're still going to move towards your goal when there isn't necessarily a big step to take, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that is often the case with any kind of professional, like any kind of profession. Like if you are a professional person, especially if you're a type A, like you're always moving towards something. And sometimes you're stuck, right? Like you can't take that giant leap. And so it's like, just keep moving forward.
Yeah. Love that.
And then I heard another one recently, which is, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And it's like that whole idea of you can make it happen. Like, don't worry about if, just keep working on it. It's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're dedicated for long enough, you will make it happen. So if you take if out of the equation, then it's gonna happen. I just need to figure out how and when. Yeah, those are awesome. Thank you. So if somebody wants to learn more about you, can they connect with you and find out more?
So you can, for the Mompowerment stuff, it's literally like I'm everything Mompowerment. So you can go to mompowerment.com. On Twitter, I'm, twitter.com/Mompowerment. On Facebook, I'm, facebook.com/Mompowerment.
Okay.
And if for some reason somebody wants to check out the marketing stuff that I do, you can go to oksuzy.com.
And thank you so much for being on the show. It's been very insightful. I've learned a ton, and I'm sure that my audience has too. So thank you.
It has truly been my pleasure.
Did you love listening to Suzanne as much as I enjoyed interviewing her? She had so much to share and such amazing insight about how we can be intentional about our time as working parents, as working mums, whether you're working as a part-time working mum or a full-time working mum, her tips around, fitting in self-care into your busy schedule and being intentional about how you approach your workday were just gold. So I would encourage you to take those on board. It was also really helpful to hear her speak about making that transition from your time at work to your time with your kids, giving yourself some time to mentally prepare for the next stage that you're going to go through in your day. So I would encourage you to also take that on board. That's amazing advice. So go and check out her book. Head over to lightboxcoaching.com/episode 31 so you can get the link to her book. And just a reminder that the Balanced Working Mum Challenge is starting tomorrow, Monday the 9th of July 2018. We will be going through 5 days of sharing really simple but impactful tips that you can use to increase balance in your life. As I discussed with Suzanne, sometimes it's just the small changes that you make that can make a huge impact. So come jump in with us. It's free. You just need to sign up at lightboxcoaching.com/balanced working mum challenge, and there's a hyphen in between each word. Come and sign up, come join us, and I will also be hanging out in the private Facebook group. So if you haven't joined that already, come over to the Careers Beyond Motherhood community on Facebook. There's over 200 women in there sharing and encouraging one another as we navigate this roller coaster ride that is working mum life. All right, that's all from me today. I will be back soon, and in the meantime, make sure you subscribe to the show so that you can be notified when episodes go live. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you could head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the show so that more awesome working mamas just like you can find the show and join in the conversation. This podcast features music from Ben Sound.